Hey guys, welcome back to the Western Movement podcast. Today we have an awesome guest with us, Kylea Becker. And before we get into the conversation with her, I'm just going to talk to you guys a little bit about her athletic journey. So, her last 2 years playing, she spent at Cal Poly Humboldt over in California. She's in her third year, but she has some exciting news for that. But while she's been at Cal Poly, she's been a very consistent player for them, and she's received conference accolades, team accolades, been a consistent starter for them. So she's had a very, very good career there. Now she's moving on to Rome, going into her last 2 years of eligibility to pursue her academic and athletic career, which can't wait to talk to her about that. And before she was at Cal Poly, she had a great career, standout career at Rapid City Central, where I know her from. While at Central, she received MVP awards, offensive awards, exact same way that she did at Cal Poly, and she stood out for the Black Hills Rapids Club as well while she was there. So super happy to have you on the show, Kylea.
Hi, I'm Kylea. Everything she said was correct. The one thing I will add, though, is when I go to Rome, it's not NCAA, so I can play for as many years as I want out there. But we'll get into that more when we go over to the Rome thing. But it's a pretty cool situation, so that'll be fun to talk about.
Dang, yeah. So your eligibility timer just literally skyrocketed to infinity. How nice.
Yes, it did. Very nice. Very nice.
But I think it'd be fair to say that your athletic career and the things that I just listed off, everything that's on paper, where you've gone to school, how you've done as an athlete, there's a lot more to it than just that. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, there's a lot more to it. I mean, mentally is the biggest thing. Like, a lot of people don't talk about. It's not common to talk about it. I mean, who wants to talk about their mental health? You know, it's not something you do very often and just openly. So that was definitely my biggest struggle from the start of my college career, because high school was just a horrible mental age for me. And obviously I overcame that. That's why I'm here. But this year was another tough mental challenge. I think, again, we'll get into that time. But I think mentally it's just something that everyone needs to talk about, because that's what I struggled with most all of my college and high school years of soccer.
When you were growing up and going from high school to college, you talk about those mental struggles in that environment that's not really discussed that much. How was it shaped in your mind as a youth athlete up until now as a college athlete? The whole conversation around mental health, like resources you could have or conversations to have or things that we always think we're going through something that nobody else is going through, but very, very likely it's the same battle that someone else is facing. So what narrative was kind of shaped for you as you were growing up in the sport?
Well, personally, I mean, this just may be a personal opinion, but I think women's soccer specifically is very, like, there's a stereotype, you know, and usually they're of the white race and they have a little bit more money. So honestly, I don't think mental health is really talked about in women's soccer very often. I mean, look at the girl from Stanford like 4 years ago. I mean, that was a thing for what, a year, you know? So my mental health when I was in high school was, no one talked about it. I mean, obviously your counselors came to your class and said, if you have mental problems, like, come to us, we can help you. But that was pretty much it regarding, like, the support I felt like I had. Like, I didn't really feel like, especially the player I was in high school, I feel like if I had a bad game, people were just worried about my performance. But half the time when I had a bad game, it's just because I was going through something mentally or at home, you know, and obviously no one's going to ask about that. They just are wondering why I had a bad performance. And I think that really affected me, because going into college, I felt like it was going to be the same thing. Obviously, like, no one's going to care about my mental health. But when I got here, my coach, way more, I think that was the main thing he was worried about. And I think he saw that. So it was a big shift for me, because my coach had asked me, like, are you okay? And I think that's when it changed my freshman year, was I had realized, like, oh, I have someone that's actually looking out for my mental health instead of my just my playing, you know? So that was a big shift for me. So it changed from, I felt like I had no support high school to shoot, I have my trainers here, I had my coach here, I had my players here. Like, it was a lot. It was better. It was way better. I mean, I had more support. I didn't feel like I was alone. I felt like a lot of people also talked about their mental health on our team going into our second year. Our first year wasn't very talked about, but I think it just shifted over time. And the main thing was just there was support and it was verbalized to me, which is very important. And I don't think a lot of people get.
When you talk
That
about
makes
support, yeah, that makes great sense. And
okay.
the main thing that I want to know is those, like, a lot of things that you were dealing with didn't always stem from like the athletics that you're playing. It wasn't always from your performance. Like, sometimes you'll have a bad game and you're like, oh my gosh, and you kind of sleep it off and you get right back into it. And some people let games spiral. Like, that can be someone's sole pressure and anxiety in life. But we don't always talk about the things that are going on off the court, relationships, family stuff, school stuff, just growing up stuff that really come into effect and have an impact on our performance. So you got that community when you went to college, because I think it might just be the transition. Some programs really care about the mental health of their athletes, some programs couldn't care less. But having those people in your corner, having that community around you, probably allowed you to work through it instead of just bottle it up or like express it in ways that were harming to yourself or harming to your relationships or harming to your performance. So, say you're talking to a youth athlete now who is in your shoes, they're back in Rapid, and they don't have that community yet. I hope through this podcast and these conversations, like, that can kind of be a bit of the community that they can have and people that support them. But what would be your advice to them to manage their mental and emotional health without all the resources that you have when you get to the college level?
That's a hard one. I mean, I I would say it's a mindset. When I was in high school, I think the only thing that really kept me going and got me through high school soccer was my mindset. I think you really have to say, like, this is only a sliver of your life, especially if you're planning to go further on and playing. Like, this is only a sliver of your, like, you're just getting started as a player in high school. Like, you really aren't meeting any of your full potential in high school. And I think you really have to tell yourself that, like, shoot, I'm having a mental battle with this. Let's go out, play some soccer, get it off your mind. I feel like you need to use your sport, especially if you're mentally struggling, as an outlook. Like, not something that's going to make it worse. Like, don't, if you're having a bad time mentally, don't think of your sport as like it's all or nothing. If I do bad, like, my day's going to get worse. Like, don't think that way, because if you have a bad day in high school, I mean, like, you're not going to remember that. I don't remember one game from high school, you know what I mean? So I would just give myself the advice, like, or anyone right now that's in high school, um, don't stress too much about it. You know, your mental health is more important than your performance most of the time. And I think a lot of coaches also see that. Like, if you have a bad mindset and you get like frustrated on the field, and that, like, you let how you're feeling emotionally take over on the game, that, like, you, that gets seen. So I think once you go and play whatever your sport is, like, just think of it as something that's going to make your day better. Don't think of it as like, my bad performance is going to make it worse. Like, you're not going to get anything out of that. I don't know how to really answer that question other than just use your sport to help you. Don't let it tear you down anymore, especially in high school. Shoot, in college, it's a different story because obviously you're paid for. Like, it's a lot different in college, but in high school, I would just recommend, don't be stressing too much about your sport. It's the least of your problems. Get mentally all right. And if you don't have any support, like I said, use the sport as your support. You know, use it to brighten your day, use it to get your mind off something. I think sports nowadays are really emphasized on, like, you have to do good to succeed, which isn't true in high school. I mean, I'll share a little bit about my high school experience to make this question easier. I wasn't going to go to college for sports. I had already gotten my whole plan. I was going to Iowa State. I was going to be a vet. I had my roommate and my classes. I wasn't going to play. And it wasn't until like, I want to say the last tournament of club, I had gotten a handful of offers, which I had not seen. Like I had never reached out to coaches, which was my main problem, obviously. And no coaches had really reached out to me other than local ones. And that one tournament obviously changed everything around. And that was like a month before school was over. So this was like, I'm graduating in a month. Do I actually want to change my whole plans and go play? That's like what would I do? I don't know. I still don't know what I would do. Like high school, it was a horrible time for me. I don't, that's all I really.
Okay, let me ask you this then.
Okay.
Should you have probably needed, you talk about it's your mentality, use your sport as an outlet, but we probably didn't really do that very well in high school all the time, which is probably why you're emphasizing it. So that comes to the framework of defining success in our minds and defining failure in our minds, and defining those things and our expectations is what's going to really set us up for what kind of emotional roller coaster that we ride. Like you said, like if I show up and have a bad game, I'm a failure. Or if I don't get this scholarship to this program that I want to go, I have completely failed. Then if that's your only expectation and that's your standard, it's going to be really hard to navigate those things. But if you have a different standard for success of, I'm going to have a mentality of growth, I'm going to show up and put my best foot forward every day, I'm going to be a positive leader, and I'm going to nurture like my relationships with my teammates, my coaches, my teachers, my peers. And then you're going to do that background work of recruiting, which is, it's a different thing. It doesn't just happen on the court, but you're going to do the recruiting, you're going to put in the extra work, you're going to be dedicated, you're going to do the skill work and the film and all the other things that come into being a great player. But if you're like dependent on certain expectations to find fulfillment instead of setting your certain expectations of success in a way that's constantly growing and manageable and a lot more in your hands than it is in a coach's hands or a recruiter's hands or your parents' hands or someone else's, then you can navigate it. Then you can like see progress. And when you face those inevitable like you're inevitably gonna fail in high school and you're gonna have bad games, you're gonna have crappy relationships, you're gonna have all these things going on and it's gonna be extremely stressful. That stuff's inevitable. But if you have a foundation that you can see progress and be joyful and enjoy it and use your sport as an outlet and a skill that you're developing, then like you said, I think when we look back and I ask you like, oh well, how would you as a youth athlete fix it? Well, you're sitting in college right now facing a lot of the same things. So it's like, well, I don't freaking know. Don't ask me that question because I don't know. I'm still figuring it out. And I like am the same exact way. So that was a loaded question, but it goes back to it should be an outlet, but there's more to it than just a game. There's skill development, there's film, there's like understanding and IQ. There's all these things. You can go put your time and energy into that instead of, oh, I had a crappy practice today, or I sucked at the game, or we're losing and we didn't even make state. Like, if you want to get to the college level, go fine tune those things and have a measurable level to your success instead of just what everyone else says is success or what everyone else says is failure, because that'll lead to the mental health issues that we see a lot in youth and even college. So that leads me into it with college. You're taking a different path as an athlete. You didn't play this year, and now you're going to go to Rome and play and go to school and do all this, and it's not the cookie cutter experience, nor were your last 2 years. So when you look at that, is there a turmoil? Is there kind of a pit in your stomach when you look at it and it's not exactly what you'd wished or expected for your college career? Like, it doesn't live up to that expectation of success that you had for yourself?
Well, I'm going to be honest. Well, like I said, straight out of high school, obviously I wasn't planning on playing a collegiate sport. So coming into college, my mindset was just, I'm here, I'm going to play. That was my standard when I first got here, because coming into college, my love for the sport was really drained already. Like I had very minimal love left. And so the one thing I was working on when I got here was just play. Like, learn how to play again, learn how to play how you used to play, learn how to play with the love you used to play with, So that was what I was working off of when I first got to college. And, playing a college sport, regardless of what division you are, is still a heavy weight load. Like, regardless of where you are, like D1, D2, D3, NCAA, community, like, playing a sport, you do have to set a lot of extra time aside regardless. And so my first thing I was working on when I got to college was like just play, that was what I was working through. And then the shift was right as I started playing. I realized like, oh, I'm coming from South Dakota to a school in California that's conference is really like hyped up around here, and I'm like, oh, I'm playing a lot, I'm getting minutes. I didn't expect to get that. I had no expectation of playing my first year of college, especially not the amount I played. So my mindset really shifted probably like the third game in. I was like, okay, this isn't fake anymore. Like, I got to step up. Like, I got to change my mindset. Like, I got to change my drive, because my drive was no longer, I just needed to play. Like, I already had made that standard. My drive had to become something new, so I had to expand, and I had to be like, what's my new goals? So my freshman year, my new goals were, to be straight honest with you, I was pretty tough on myself freshman year, but my goals were, don't make silly mistakes. Like, don't turn over the ball more than so many times per game, I wanted to score a lot of goals. That didn't happen, but, that's okay. And so, what was the original question? Sorry, I got distracted.
So your career in college, how has it aligned with what you expected success to be while you've been here playing?
Okay, and so from high school to now, this half season I've played, I was successful in my brain, because, like I said, I wasn't coming to college originally to play soccer. So I had now come to college. I had now started on a team as a freshman from South Dakota to California, which is, I think, should be really talked about. I give myself a lot of props for that, because the Midwest, I mean, yeah, we got some great players, but as a whole, compared to California, our teams are nowhere near the same level of playing at all. And so, I mean, I gave myself a lot of props coming from South Dakota to a California team, especially California Conference. And I had really thought I was successful. And then the season had gotten over, and I really wasn't happy with my performances, like stat wise. Like, obviously the basics, like I had played a lot, I had assisted a few times, I did what I needed to do freshman year. But so at the beginning of the year, I was successful. But by the end of it, I didn't feel as if I performed the way I should have at this level. I didn't think I scored enough goals, or, I think I made some silly mistakes. So I was very hard on myself. And that's where like the mental battle really started, because I had seen all these girls. Like, this girl had like 7 goals in my conference. I had 3. Okay, so I was like, oh, I'm not as successful as this girl. I didn't succeed like she did this season. So that's really where it started. And that's where I was like, I may be successful in my eyes from a high schooler standpoint, but I had now realized like what successful was for me was a lot higher than what I expected it to be. Like, I had to change my expectation from like performance from here to here in just 1 year, not even a year, just a semester of like college soccer. So success really changed, and it's still changing. Like, right now, my version of success is way different from my version of success freshman year. My version of success freshman year was way different than my version of success sophomore year. I would say I was pretty successful, but overall, on my standpoint, though, I think I really struggled in some aspects. So I don't know if I really met my means of success, but to an average person, I would say I would. But I don't know. I don't think that should be how it works. I think you should set your own goals, and if you don't reach them, then reach them, like do something, like change and work harder to build those goals and meet them. So yeah, I can't give you a specific answer because, like I said, my goals and success idea has changed every year, and right now I have no clue what success is going to look like. Like my version of success changes every year, but from high school to college, by no means was it the same. It was completely different grounds. It was I really woke up from coming from South Dakota to play here. I really woke up and realized it's a lot more serious. It's I got to take this more serious because I did not have like your podcast like 3 days ago. I watched about the winning. I'm not gonna lie to you. I had no. I did not have a definition of winning coming into college, so that definitely changed. So my success from high school to college was much different. I think I succeeded in both, but if I had the same goal as high school, then it wouldn't be realistic. So
Well, you just answered that question like perfectly, because through explaining all those things from your freshman year to your sophomore year to from high school, your expectations have changed. For example, like you said, you came into college and you weren't expecting all of this. You didn't you didn't have your expectations super high, you didn't have your standards super high, but then what you were called to, you had to step up and you had to meet that. And for you, it was more playing time, more opportunity, more responsibility than you had expected. So you shouldered that, you took it on, and you went and competed. Now, sometimes for kids, and this isn't your journey exactly, but people face that the opposite way. So they go in, they're like, I'm going to start, I'm going to do all this, like I'm going to have an amazing like first year, second year, whatever it is. And then the opposite gets flipped on them where their expectations are let down or their expectations are changed, and then they don't always adapt to that aversive situation as well as you do to a calling to compete like as a natural athlete. So that just ties right back into your expectations and your standards, and what you set as success for yourself is so important. Because had you walked in there and said, well, a successful year for me is just, getting by and whatever, I don't really care. Like, if I get to play, that's cool. If not, and then you never change that as things evolved, you've never changed that, and that stayed your goal from freshman year to sophomore year to junior year and so on, then it would have never evolved and you would have just stayed stuck there. So you explained super well through your journey how that journey of what you expect and your standards and what success looks like to you is going to ebb and flow. And as athletes, we have to understand that, because if we don't and we get stuck in the same way of, well, my high school self would have thought I'm a failure now, or 10-year-old me thought I'd be playing D1, like whatever, and I'm not, so I just completely threw my life away. Like, or my freshman self thought I'd be a starter by now, and you're not. Like, that's okay. We're always way too hard on ourselves as athletes. Your standard can't go up or down just based on the expectations that everyone else is putting on you. You got to put some on yourself, some standards for yourself that you can go consistently live out. And that goes back to what we're telling high school athletes to do. Otherwise, it's just going to be ebb and flow all the time. So I think you answered that amazingly. And thanks for sharing all of that. But from that, I want to get into, and we're kind of going to backtrack just for a second, but you weren't even going to go play. You said your love for the game wasn't there. Like, and that probably all stemmed from the headspace that you were in high school. In life, it doesn't even have to just be in the sport. What was the thing that got you to go?
I'm gonna keep it honest. So I'm gonna answer your question with complete honesty. Money. Money was my biggest driven factor. I mean, my family, we're fine. We're middle class. No struggles. Like we're not like it's not a struggle for food, but college is expensive, especially in California. And oh my goodness, I was gonna go to Iowa and go to vet school, and that's like I would have been in debt for life. So I'll talk about three of the major opportunities I got, like that I really considered coming out of high school. So I had one D1 offer that I was majorly considering. It was Idaho. And I got as much money as I got offered here my freshman year. And so it was really hard to decide, like, okay, I can go D1 with the same amount of money to go D2, so that was something I had to consider. And then I got an offer from a school in Hawaii, and then I got an offer from here. And one thing about me is I just love to get away. I love to travel. I love to learn new things. So all three of those were all very different from South Dakota, obviously. But like I said, I didn't have a lot of passion for the sport at the time, so I didn't think I could commit to going D1, so that's why I didn't decide to go there. And Hawaii was just, like I said, money was a big part of it, so Hawaii flying back and forth obviously wasn't really ideal at the time. So I chose here because I had gotten offered a really, really great scholarship for a D2. And I went and told him, I was like, well, this D1 is offering me the same amount of money. And I think it would be quite ridiculous if I didn't go because they're offering me the same amount of money. Like, I'd be paying the same amount to play at a better division. Like, I think, you got people don't talk about this, but you got to sweet talk a little bit. Like, if you want something from a coach, he's most likely going to give it to you if he wants you. You know what I mean? And if he doesn't give it to you, then don't go. You're not wanted. Because if a coach really wants you, he will give you what you ask for. Like, regardless. Coaches have money. They don't like to admit it. They may be a poor school, but every coach has money locked away. You know what I mean? And so I had kind of like sweet talked to him a little bit, and I had, and he had offered me more money. And at that point I was getting a really large scholarship that you don't usually get at D2s. So, I had to I had to commit to that. And then adding on to that, I wanted to transfer out of here my spring of freshman year, but I told my coach, I have a very good relationship with my coach. I'd say I was pretty honest with him the whole entire time I was here. We definitely had problems. Every player and their coach has problems, but I was pretty honest with mine. So freshman year, spring, I told him straight up, I don't want to be here. I'm not really happy with the team aspect right now. And he had offered me more money. And like I said, money was really valuable to me and still is. So obviously I had accepted that. And I had told him my spring of sophomore year, the same exact thing. I don't want to be here. My feelings didn't change. I told you I'd play again this semester, blah, blah, blah. Obviously it didn't change. I had told him again straight up, like, I'm not happy here. My mental health is not okay. Like, I'm not really. And this is something I think we should talk about, because as well as the relationship I had with my coach, this was something I think was used to his power. And he had offered me a full ride. And a D2 full ride is very hard to come by. So obviously I didn't walk away from that. Like I said, money's still very valuable to me. So I think my relationship with my coach is very well, because I had the courage and he would listen to me when I told him that. But I really think it should be talked about that was the answer. Let me give you more money to stay. Because that is so important to talk about. Like, you're getting paid. They pay you to be here, And I think that really added a lot of extra stress on me this year. That's why I obviously didn't end up playing this year. But I think as much as my coach wanted me, I think it really got to me. And I think the pressure of, now I have all this money, now I have a full ride, now I have to live up to these expectations, now I can't mess up because he could take it all away. Like, I'm at a perfect standpoint, but I'm also at the perfect standpoint where if I make one mistake, he can take everything away from me. Like, that's kind of the standpoint me and my coach were on. It was really complicated because, like I said, for the past 2 years, I have been telling him I don't want to be here. So now in his mind, obviously I didn't want to be here, but that wasn't ever how it was. It was just like, I wasn't mentally happy here, and he knew that. And it made me upset that his way to fix that was giving me more money. So he knew my situation. He knew that's what I needed, and that's why he gave it to me. But I think it's kind of backhanded, I don't think he ever really had a true care. I think he just knew that money was something that I was always eager to get. And I think he used it. So yeah, that should definitely be talked about more in athletics, especially collegiate athletics. Like, you do get paid for. And that was the reason I came to college in the first place, is because I got a hefty amount of money. So
Well, on that note, like, you can't downplay. You're working for a scholarship. School's expensive. Coaches are your bosses, your employees. They're literally paying you to come perform for them so they can keep their job and be successful. And since it's sports, there's a different kind of culture around it. You know, there's a team. You get treated a lot better than just a normal student on a scholarship. There's a lot of perks to it. There's a lot of expectations to it. And like, I get the money thing. When I went my first year, like, I wasn't even considering any schools that weren't going to give me a full ride. So that was like, boom, cut off half the schools I was talking to. Like, just focused on these. And then when I transferred again, I was like, well, I'm only going if they give me a full ride. Canceled out the other schools. Did that. And then when I transferred again, like, I didn't think I was going to have anywhere that would do that. So it's a funny story that you mentioned that. And I haven't even talked about this, like, literally at all on the podcast or to anyone, but I was kind of in the balance for a couple different schools for me, but like subconsciously, I was like, I worked all this time to not like to take out a loan or to do any of these things. So I'm going to go where I have a full scholarship because that's why I've worked so hard. And I was like so skewed about it, but I didn't realize it. So then when I transferred for my third time, I didn't consider the schools that were going to pay me a full scholarship. And I got to where I'm at. And then this year, I finally had a reality check where there wasn't an amount of money, there wasn't anything that could be given to me or paid to me to want to continue in the sport or in like the game or in my environment. And it was such a weird realization because ever since I was a sixth grader, I never thought I would give up the one thing that I've wanted since then, and that was to be a collegiate athlete on a full scholarship at a university. So it was the weirdest thing when I finally came around to it. Was like, there's so much more to this than having to like put everything to the side and just manage. And like, this is kind of a note too to any athlete that's running for that scholarship. It'll get you a lot of places. Like, that scholarship you will go to any means for, and you'll make it make sense to yourself, even if it doesn't. Just to keep like having school paid for, just to keep playing the sport, just to do all these things, you'll justify so many things. So having a knowledge of, okay, that's important, but it's not everything, is really important. And that honestly doesn't come sometimes until you graduate, you gotta get a real job and be in the real world. But when you're an athlete, like, the hopes and dreams is to play your sport, be paid to do it, and go to school for free. Like, and live for free. It's a beautiful thing.
to add on, I feel like regardless of what we just talked about, I feel like we should say this because sometimes the best, most expensive, like most given money is not the best option for you. And like, if you have financial trouble, obviously that might be the best financial trouble, like best financial situation for you. But just because a school offers you more money than this school, it does not always mean that that school is better for you than the school that didn't offer you as much money. And I also think it's important to realize, like, you can always be given more money. I just wanted to add that in because I just feel like that's very important, you know, because honestly, I would have done a few things different if money wasn't a problem for me. I would have chose probably a different school. So you can always take a risk because you can always get loans. It's also important to know, like, you don't have to go to a school that doesn't give you as much money as this other school. You know, if you want to go to that school because you think it's mentally fit for you, I would encourage you to go to that school. Because one thing my grandpa always told me, and still will always tell me, especially going to a new country soon, you know, financial is it's very nerve wracking because obviously it's in a whole different currency now. Like, it's a very scary thing. But my grandpa always tells me, like, there's money everywhere. Like, and I really think about that. Like, if you need money, get a loan. It's somewhere out there and you'll make it up somehow. Like, I hate to break it. I hate to say it like this, but life is really revolved around money nowadays. So don't ever be scared because of money. And my grandpa has always encouraged that to me. But like you said, I would feel like straight out of high school, if I was going to go play somewhere, like I'm going to get paid to go play somewhere because that's what I've worked for. I think that's what I deserved. I would definitely go with a school that you think would be more mentally fit for you. So
No, that's actually such a great point. Like, it's not, we never talk about it in the sense of there's other options. And a big part of it is at the age we're at, we're practically the same age. Like, when you're in college and high school and to college and then graduating from college, like, let's be so honest, financial like instability is everyone's life. It is a stress for everybody. It is like a transition period that is extremely hard for everybody. If you're just a student and then looking at your next steps, it's just as hard. When you're an athlete and you're looking at your next steps after college, it's even harder because you're going to look after your next steps and you're going to be like, well, I could be a coach here. I could do this here because you think, this is getting a little off topic, but you think that you're going to have to sustain yourself through the only skill that you have developed. You have to start like skill acquisition now, like while you're in college, while you're playing sports. And people who do that, it'll be so much better for your mental health if you are acquiring knowledge and experience around other activities than just your sport. But with that comes like another burden of managing playing, managing school, managing life and career. So there's a student athlete balance, but there's also like the rest of my life. What the heck am I kind of going to do and prepare myself for advantage? Because if you are just a student and you're just going to school, this isn't talked about very often either. Majority take out their loans. Majority, might have some scholarships, but primarily loans. And then you go to school preparing, if you're smart, for the next year after your like college career. The entire 4 years is spent preparing for life after college for people who use it the right way. And then for athletes, the 4 years, majority of the time, is spent preparing for the next year of college athletics. So that's just something to kind of take into note because it's a very difficult thing to manage, like perspective wise, but that comes into your expectations of success. But unless you're going to go play pro or continue your career, you want to be a coach, you want to be a trainer. But yeah, it's a discussion to be had is you have more options in your life than just the scholarship and the game, and that's all I got. The world's a lot bigger.
I feel like as an athlete, you need to be realistic because there's realistic goals and there's unrealistic goals. And I think a lot of people forget that. Like if you want to be successful in life, you also need to be very realistic with your goals because setting an unrealistic goal does not help you in any way, shape, or form. Like you need to set something that you can reach and you can reach. Yes, it may be hard to reach it, but if you're setting an unrealistic goal where it's like 99% impossible to reach and that, then you're setting yourself up for failure later on in life. And I think a lot of athletes, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but I think a lot of athletes set a lot of unrealistic goals. Like, for example, I'm just an example, not saying this is anyone in particular, but if you're at a D3, you aren't successful in school, you aren't putting up your stats, whatever, and your goal is still to become a pro player, like it's a little bit unrealistic, you know what I'm saying? So I feel like a lot of athletes need to realize you need to set goals such as like, what can I get out of this sport if I'm not going to go pro? Because athletes gain a lot of logic that other people don't, because like you said, you have to do a lot of time management. You have to learn how to compete between soccer and school. Like there's a lot of things you learn throughout college athletics. And I think people just really need to work on setting realistic goals. Like I'm still setting goals. My goals have changed every year. Like obviously I had an end goal, but that's obviously a lot different now. But I think realistic goals should be something coaches teach because I know my coach on the team, like we set goals for our seasons. Most teams do. I'm sure you did. But we always set like an unrealistic goal. Like like I always set an unrealistic goal. Like, this is what happens if everything goes perfect. And I set that unrealistic goal. It wasn't my goal, but it was like, if everything goes perfect, here it is. But then I had my goals after that. And I think a goal from college could be like, I don't know, I'm just thinking about afterwards. I really hope to be good at time management, like good at sending emails. I take a lot away from the school aspect other than, I don't know, I feel like as a college athlete, a lot of athletes get lost in like, you're just an athlete. Like, put the student in the athlete, like put, you know what I mean? And a lot of people get lost and think that they're just here for sports. But that is so wrong. Like, as a college athlete myself, I take a lot more out of the school aspect than the team aspect. As a college athlete, I think there needs to be a separation between goals, as in school goals and your sport goals, you know, and then you need to combine them and make an end goal. But just make sure you're keeping it realistic, because the second you set an unrealistic goal or standard for yourself is the second you're setting yourself up for failure.
You say realistic goals, like smart goals, and those are going to align with your expectations and being able to reassess success for yourself. And just take it back to high school. Like, if you're not getting the offers that you want and you're going into your senior year and maybe things are a little different than you expect, that doesn't mean you have to stop betting on yourself or working really, really hard at your dreams or your goals. It just might mean, okay, things are going to look a little different than I expected, but that's life. How am I going to make the absolute most of this? And then you're going to have to assess, do you really love the game, or did you just love what the ideal success of it was? Do you really want to put the work in, or did you just want the title and the logo? And those are all questions you have to ask yourself, and ties into your goals, your unrealistic goals of, yeah, if everything goes perfect, this is how it's going to look, but things never go perfect, and you have to know how to navigate that. So I think that's a great point you made. So I kind of want to go in a little bit to specifically being from Rapid. You mentioned going from Rapid to California is something you should give yourself props to, because a lot of people don't leave their hometowns, nor have the desire, nor care to. But there's a lot of lessons you learn by going so far out of your comfort zone to somewhere that you've never been before. So when you're growing up pursuing soccer in Rapid, what were some of the benefits that you experienced as an athlete from being from there, and some of the disadvantages, you could say? You did hint on some of them, so this could probably be like a quick answer, but
Benefit, which is really random, but it was a really good benefit. Indoor soccer. Indoor soccer helped a lot. And a lot of people don't do indoor soccer, and indoor soccer helps with a lot of tactical, like really short movement skills. So I came into California, which obviously never did indoor, with that little one up. So I think as a soccer player, that's something that, just so you guys know, if you're from Rapid City, South Dakota, or any cold place that does indoor, a lot of places don't. And that's where a lot of your quick skills come from. So I think everyone should remember that. Go inside, use an indoor ball if you're a soccer player. The disadvantages, exposure. That's the biggest thing that I struggled with. I mean, shoot, I'll give myself the credit. I was a great soccer player in high school. I was a great soccer player growing up. You know, like a lot of people told me, like, you're a great player, you know, and I knew. I didn't really take growing up in South Dakota playing soccer very seriously. I mean, I'll give myself credit. I'm not trying to be overconfident myself, but I don't know. Growing up, I really didn't have to try, you know, so that carried on to teams. And for example, when you play for nationals in South Dakota for soccer, you're playing the same team 3 times to get into that national tournament. Like, we only have 2 clubs. I don't know how it is anymore, but when I was growing up, there was only 2 clubs. So I had to play the same team 3 times to get to this national tournament. Well, what preparation does that do for anything? Like, I'm just getting used to playing these players. I'm getting used to their skills. I know how to play against them, but now I'm going to go play against these teams that I've never seen before and have to play against total different skill levels that I've never had to face. You know what I mean? So exposure, playing against new competition was always a struggle to me. And I think I got really comfortable because, like I said, I was really good back in the day. Like, I got really comfortable and I didn't feel like I had to work. And that honestly set the tone for a lot of my future moving forward. Like, I had it in my mind, like, I didn't have to work to be good because I never did when I was growing up. So that was a main struggle. Like, I really got woken up here. Like I said, I did come here and I got to play right away. And, I was good when I got here. But man, was I anything that I wasn't nearly as good as I should have been. You know what I mean? Like, if I had put in the extra work as a younger child, like if I had put in the work growing up, I would not have to put nearly as much work as what I have to put in now, which is unfortunate, but I'm going to do it. But that was the biggest struggle. That was I'm sure still a lot of people do. Like, just playing soccer in Rapid City, especially, you don't have to work very hard. And I hate I hate that that's the truth, but you really don't. Like, you're competing for one team. You're competing against the same players you competed against since you were 4 years old. Like, I wish it wasn't that. I wish I didn't have to say you don't have to work very hard, but you really don't. Coming from the club that I worked for, like, you don't have to work hard. You should. Like, I should have. I really wish I would have, but I didn't, because you don't really have to, which is just unfortunate, because I think a lot of mindset comes from your environment, like what you have to do in your environment. And I think a lot of the mindsets get disrupted because they're so used to being in such a comfortable space where they don't have to work hard because they've been the best player on their club team since they were 4 years old, because they've grown up with the same players. They've gotten one or two new players. They've lost one or two players, but you literally play with the same people from 4 years old to before you leave for college. And I think it's really hard to do that. And I don't think a lot of people from other areas of the country realize that that's what a lot of people from the Midwest do. Like, I don't think soccer players in general, like, I don't know about other sports. I don't know how it is with other sports. Obviously, it's probably pretty similar, obviously. But I don't think people from other places in the country realize the Midwest aspect of sports, because there's not much to it. You know what I mean? Like, if you know this person, you probably know this person from the Midwest. You know what I'm like? It's a really small community. And I think for how talented some of our players come out, we should get a lot more credit, because the way I put it is, I think, like, think of the best player in Rapid, for example, whatever, on any team. You take that best player, you go throw them in, and you go throw them in with the best players in California. Oh, they're going to get eaten alive. Unless they're really that good. You go put them in Florida, they might get eaten alive. It's really hard to distinguish if you're a good player from the Midwest, because the community of good players is not the community as good of the players from a different part of the country. So I think that was the biggest struggle.
There's truth in that, because the exposure, okay, yeah, you had indoor soccer, which is awesome. Go sign up if you guys aren't signed up. You're a soccer player. But the exposure is the issue for all sports. And I have a lot of opinions on that. But first of all, a lot of kids blame exposure as to why they don't go anywhere. But a lot of that is, exposure doesn't matter if you're actually not good at what you do. And second of all, if you're really good at what you do, you have to go seek exposure. Like, the first AU program that's been on the west side of the state in West River was the Gators, and I work with them and stuff in the summer, and I've known them since they started, but that's the only AU program on the west side of the state, and they go to Chicago, they go to Des Moines, they go to Omaha, all the places you have to go to play. But people don't realize, like, if you're in Rapid, you are not competing against Stevens. You're not competing against Spearfish High School. Like, that's not your competition. You should be beating the O'Gormans. You should be beating the Washingtons. You have to go to the east side of the state and compete. And it's not because we don't have good developmental programs in Rapid, or it's not because we have poor resources in Rapid. It's just because the natural level of play and competitive environment is over there in a bigger city. People think that Rapid is like Sioux Falls, but it's not. It's way more rural. It is. You have to treat Rapid City like you are in a rural position of any of the smaller towns that are surrounding it. And if you're from like a smaller town surrounding Rapid, you understand that. Like, you have to go places to seek exposure, but you can't go to Rapid to seek exposure, which a lot of people do. West River, they think, okay, I'll go to Rapid. That's a big stage. I'll compete there and I'll expose myself there. No, like, that's not enough. You should be able to dominate in Rapid, dominate across the state. Like, if you really want to go play at high levels, you have to get in front of other eyes. And it was funny, we played at NAIA school, like, preseason this year, and one of our girls from Gators signed with them and was going to go play next year. And I talked to her after the game, the head coach, and I was just like, what do you think it is, like, when it comes to Rapid? You know, we have all these really great athletes, but they're not going anywhere. They're staying there or they're not playing sports. And she said the exact same thing. It's exposure. You have to get out in front of them. They're not coming to Rapid to come see you. And I give props to my parents, and you mentioned it. You have to get outside of freaking Rapid City and go play somebody. And I have done that since I was little, and we were in an even tinier town. Like, gone to the biggest camps, gone to the biggest, like, events, and competed against the best people. And then when we were in Rapid, I spent majority of my time playing East River in the summers, in the fall. Like, that's where I grew. And then when I was in Rapid, you have to go seek the best competition in Rapid, not just the best player on your team. Because if you're just the best player on your team, that's not nearly enough. So I think that's a great point and something people need to take note of. So thank you for bringing that up. So the next thing I kind of want to get into with you is, I had a list of questions I was supposed to ask you, but I feel like we've covered majority of them by just jumping over the topics and going over your story and different things. So I appreciate that. But something we haven't talked about a lot is you going to Rome. So I just want you to give your thoughts and kind of where you're at now, because it'll be different in a month, 2 months, 2 years, your thoughts on it now. But what is your advice to someone going into that super unknown chapter, like the youth athlete going into the college chapter? Because you're practically making that exact same jump now, moving into Rome.
Moving to an uncharted territory is always scary. And if you're not scared, shoot, I don't think you should go, because it's terrifying. If you're going to leave home, it's terrifying. And if you're not scared, then props to you, but you got something's wrong with you. Like, you should be nervous. Like, I've already done this once. Like, I went from South Dakota to California all by myself, drove my car, so like I've made a transition before, and it's, regardless of the distance, it's still a very large thing. But my advice would be, it's not even my advice, it's my grandpa's advice, because I get a lot of my inspiration from my grandpa, and like a lot of my like drive to do stuff, and like he kind of gives me the okay on how like I think, you know what I mean? He like reassures me like, it's okay, like this is okay. So I had gotten the email from the Rome team that reached out for me, and I was freaking out. I was like, Grandpa, is this fake? Is this like, this is fake news? Like, someone's trolling with me right now, Grandpa. And he was like, you need to look into this because this is serious. And I was like, okay. I stopped joking. I was like, okay. I hung up and I did all my research. Great opportunity. And I called him back. I was crying. I was like, Grandpa, I don't know what to do. Like, I want to go so bad, but that's terrifying. Like it's not just, I can't just come home. You know what I mean? I told him that. I was like, I don't know what to do. I'm terrified. Like, I think it's a great opportunity. I can't do it though. Like, I've already done it once. I don't know if I could do it again. He asked me, he was like, do you think this is a good opportunity? I said, yes. He's like, do you think everyone gets this opportunity? I said, no. He's like, so why would you, the one that gets this opportunity, not even consider it? I was like, okay, shoot. Probably right. I mean, a lot of people from my hometown, especially in my position now, even don't get this opportunity. So now I'm thinking to myself, shoot, why would I not take this opportunity? Like, this is a crazy great opportunity. Like, especially if you're in high school and you get this crazy offer, or like you get this offer you never expected, and like, oh, people would totally want this offer. Like, have some pride in that. Like, let that be enough encouragement to go do it. Like, if you feel good because you got offered something that isn't very common, hold on to that. Like, go get it. Like, don't just let it be an offer. Let it be like the real opportunity that you're going to take. You know what I mean? And my grandpa really put that into my brain. He was like, you need to understand, regardless if you go over there and you don't like it, regardless if you go over there and you don't do well, you took your opportunity. Like, you only get so many opportunities. And he also mentioned, like, you're 20 years old. Like, you get the opportunity to go across, play overseas, get the opportunity to go chance to play pro, and you're only 20. A lot of people do that after college, like in 2 more years, I would do that normally, like it's not something you just do. My advice would just be, if you have an opportunity and it genuinely is like an opportunity that brings you excitement, like it could be a silly opportunity and you think it's cool, take it. Because an opportunity that brings you excitement is an opportunity that is you're going to be excited about. You know what I mean? Like, you're going to want to continue to do it. Like, if it brought you that spark, like, oh my gosh, like I get to do this, like this is a possibility for me. Like, obviously somewhere inside of you, you want to do that. So don't let it go. Like, take it. Take opportunities that bring you excitement, because those are the opportunities that you really will jump on and work for. Because the biggest thing moving to Rome for me was, this year for soccer, I'll talk a little bit about it because I think it's something that a lot of people could relate to in college athletics. It was the beginning of the season. I was on the team. I was still the starter. I was still like, you know what I mean? Like, I still had everything. And I just couldn't do it. And I had a lot of family stuff happen to me last year. And I was just on a downward spiral, honestly. I hate to admit it like that, but I was on a very, very large downhill. It wasn't going in a good direction, and it really took over, and it had gotten to me, and that's the reason I wasn't on the team anymore. There's a lot more to it, but I'm just going to put it in simple terms. Like, I wasn't mentally okay, and so I wasn't on the team. that was it, and it kind of just happened, kind of like out of nowhere. Like, I woke up one day and I was like, I really don't want to be on this team. And the next day I wasn't. And that was it. I didn't, that was it. Like, I didn't have processing time. And then not even 2 weeks later, I get this email and I'm like, oh my God. And like, I had gotten back to the point where it was like high school all over again. It was the point where, okay, I'll just be done. Like, I was content. I was content. I was like, I played 2 great years of soccer. I got a lot of minutes, more than most. I was content with my performance. Then this opportunity obviously had arose, and I was like, why was I content with myself? Why was I content? I talked to my coach, my club coach, and me and him, really ups and downs throughout my life. But he's always telling me, you're going to go pro. Like, if you want to go pro, you can go pro. Like, you got to work. You don't work, but you can go pro. And the last time I texted him, I obviously told him about this opportunity, and I was like, what do you think about it? And I'll just pull it up because it really shapes what I did moving forward and how I think moving forward as of right now. Like I said, if you have opportunity that excites you, take it. But this is some wise words from a very wise man I said, I got my offer from them. Have you taken a deeper look? He was going to take a deeper look in the school, and he told me, I do think it would be a good opportunity for you. Going overseas and taking advantage of this opportunity at your age is pretty awesome. Keep me posted on how things are going. Hour later, he texts me. He's like, you need to be challenged more, though. You need to be pushed because you can do some pretty amazing things if in the right environment. That really stuck with me. And I was like, I know I have potential. I haven't reached my full potential. And most people in college don't reach their full potential until their last year of college because it's an uphill battle. You go left and right, you go up and down. You never have a consistent amount of, like, you never consistently go up. You know what I mean? Like, you'll get better, but it'll be the next week and you'll have a downfall. Like, it's just how it is. So I don't truly think you reach your full potential until your final years of your sport, you know what I mean? Or like final years of college. But the in the right environment part is a very large factor. Like, I know you've transferred multiple times because it's not the right environment. And I think that should be normal. I think transferring is terrifying, but I think if you don't think this is the right environment for you to peak and for you to succeed to your full potential, and that's it. Like, why would you stay? You know, you need to be in an environment that you can mentally be okay, physically be okay. You know, like, you need emotional support, you need physical, like, you need all of it. And if you don't have all of it, find a better piece, you know? And I think that should be talked about, because transferring is terrifying, but if you're not in the right environment, you're never going to reach your full potential.
And with people moving on to those next steps and taking your words of advice, like, if it's something you're excited about, go seize it. It's very, very true. Like, and I've experienced that in my different processes of making the decisions that I was going to make, especially like out of my freshman year of high school. I knew that, well, I want to go here because that's super exciting. And I felt it, and it did not disappoint. But it was the same way with the next time that I had to transfer and all these things. And around the conversation around transferring, that's like we could talk about that for hours. But the thing with your environments is sometimes I will have to say, like, you do just have to, like, dig your heels in and make it the right environment for yourself. As, like, brutal as that is, you cannot chalk it up to your coaches and your teammates and your family or whoever to make it a good environment for yourself. It's when it gets to the point where, okay, I'm doing everything in my control, but there's still these things that are like, I can't handle these. And then you have to be honest with yourself when you're at the point of, I can't handle this. Like, I seriously can't do it anymore. And I think you kind of got to that point where you had the money, you had the playing time, you had all the things, but you just had to look inside and say, this isn't clicking. Like, I am not happy. I have controlled what I can control. I put my best foot forward, but this is my time to move on to the next chapter. And I think God had a hand in that. For the next week, you had an opportunity. And it's funny because that's the exact same thing that happened to me here. Like, I say it as like I was at a river that I couldn't cross, and I'd crossed it and crossed it and crossed it. I was good. And then it was fine. Like, you are putting yourself in a worse position doing this thing that's safe, but the thing that everyone expects you to do, versus stepping back and saying, actually, like, I don't think I could shoulder and fight that battle and be the person that I want to be. So that's a whole nother conversation when we talk about transferring and programs and stuff, because I've by choice transferred once, and not by choice had to transfer, and then I by choice said, I don't think this is for me anymore. So we're not going to talk about my path around that right now, but it's very true, the effects that your environment can have on you. But you hear that in high school, your people matter, your mindset matters. West River, your community has an influence on you, and you have to, like, your grandpa is an obvious role model to you, and his words of wisdom are clear. Like, he has that perspective for you that's the right perspective, because all it would have took is one person, like, who you look to like that. So you had the wrong mentors in your life that said, yeah, you're right, it's not worth it. Don't spend the money, don't do that, that's crazy, just go home. That's all it takes. You would have been on the first flight back home. So it's really important, the people that you turn to in times of advice and in times of need like that, because it's been extremely important for me as well. So it's an important topic. But I mean, we've covered about everything. So I want to know, do you have any closing thoughts?
Closing thoughts. My closing thought, or like a message, I guess you could say a message. College athletics are not as they are perceived. And you have to realize that before you go into it. And there's a lot of untalked about things. You can go on a visit to a school, talk to the teammates, talk to the coaches, and they still will not tell you everything in it, actually how it is. So, like, before you make a decision, not like think it through, because obviously you should think through every decision, but when making a decision to go into college athletics, you have to really, really look into it. Like, you can't just briefly skim over it. Like, you really need to look into it. And I think a lot of people skip that part. Personally, I skipped that part. I mean, I came here, went on my visit, I met 2 people. I thought they were cool. I came here, weather's beautiful, it's great outside. I was like, oh, what could be wrong? You know, I didn't really look into it. Like, I really think when deciding on a school, you should look into it, set goals before you go, see if those goals can be acquired being there. You know what I mean? Like, before you make a decision, just really consider it, because I hate to say it, but it's probably never going to change. But college, when committing to a college, you're never going to get every answer that you want when you go there. Like, you're going to go and you're going to ask them to be straight honest with you, and they will lie. But it's their job. You have to understand it's a game. I hate to say it, it's a game. You can't take things personal when you're in college athletics, because at the end of the day, they're here to make themselves look better, to recruit you for them to be better as a team, as a whole, for them to have more success. And you are there for the same reasons. So you have to understand when committing to a school or committing to a coach. Like, some people will commit to a school just for a coach, and that's fine. But you have to realize, like, it's a game. Like, you have to understand that they may be playing you, and you have to be okay with that. Like, you can't take anything to heart in college, because at the end of the day, they're doing their job. So you can't take it very personal. You know what I mean? Like, shoot, they might screw you over, but at the end of the day, they were doing their job and they were getting it done. So that's my one advice. You can't take things personal. It's business. It's the unfortunate truth, but it's the truth. So before deciding, really make sure you're really looking into it and understanding the opportunity you're about to take. So that'd be my one advice.
I think that's a very important point, that you need to understand what you're emotionally investing into, or how much of yourself that you're giving to these coaches and these programs, because it's very true. Like, not everyone's gonna have the best intentions for you, and you aren't gonna run into a ton of super authentic head coaches or programs as a whole. So it's a very, very, very good point. You were selling yourself the same way that they're selling themselves, and authenticity and integrity sometimes can be decently hard to come by. So you're right, you can't let one little mishap in that realm throw you completely off track and give up your dreams or beat yourself up for it.
But I will add one more thing. I heard this a lot, like, considering transferring, the grass isn't always greener. And that saying is just horrible, because it's true. The grass is really not always greener, but don't let someone say the grass isn't always greener ruin your opportunity. Like, don't let that be inflicting, but you got to remember the grass isn't always greener. Like, that's obviously why I didn't transfer before I did, because I had a lot of green grass, and it doesn't get much greener than what I had, but mentally it needed to be. So that's obviously why I transferred, or ended up deciding to transfer.
It's funny that you say that, but my sophomore year, after I had to leave and transfer, a coach from my first year on the coaching staff called me and said, "Hey, like, I guess grass isn't always greener, is it?" And I mean,
They got you. Like, they get you with that one, because it's so true. Like, the grass is really not always greener. So just remember that before you make a decision leaving your space.
100%. And something you have to realize is, if you are transferring, or I mean, this applies if you're committing to a school, you need to look at your true intentions behind why you're doing it. If you're just running from your problems, or you're just running from something that you need to handle and you need to take accountability for, then yeah, everywhere you go, you're going to have an issue. But if you just start to take full account, then this sounds extreme, but like, you just take full accountability for absolutely everything and anything that goes on in your life. Like, coach says something or something happens in your environment, then you can navigate that. But if you're just going somewhere because, I got sick of this place, I want to go to this place, or you're just transferring like that, you're gonna have just issues for the rest of your life. So just learn that now. Be accountable. But yeah, I had a coach say that to me. It's the same coach that's still asking me to come back, but I left because grass was not very green. I hope they don't tune into this and hear that. But anyways,
I mean, hey, you can't get in trouble for it, so.
our freaking podcast, and say what I want.
I was going to bring up something else. As a player that gets a lot of time, obviously I'm not going to speak with this on full confidence, but I do have a lot of friends that have spoken to me about it. But a lot of people get stuck at a standstill in college athletics. And what I mean by that is, like, you can be a great player in high school and you think you can come in thinking you're going to play. We talked about this, and you set all these standards for yourself and it doesn't happen. And now you're sitting at a standstill because you want to leave, but you can't. Because you can't really leave a college athletic team with no film and expect to go to a better college athletic team or even the same level of college athletics. So I feel like a lot of people struggle. I mean there's not much you really can do. It really is horrible. But I feel like I'm only saying this because I would reach out to those two people, because those people at a standstill probably have it the worst, because they want to get out, but they physically can't. They have no option to get out. So I really think, I'm only bringing this up because I really think people should talk to those kind of players. I think if you're friends with someone that faces that kind of struggle, then you should really reach out to them, because that's probably one of the hardest places to be inside of college athletics, is wanting to transfer, but you physically don't have film, so you can't, or you haven't played in a year, so you can't, I think people should really make sure those people are okay, because I think that's genuinely the hardest place to be in a college athletic team.
I love that you bring that up, because, okay, that is such a truth, and it is such an issue, and it is a very hard thing. If you aren't playing and you want to transfer, it's going to be, like you said, very hard to go somewhere of equal competitiveness, or to like stay at the same level, or you're not going to jump levels very likely. But it's hard for people when their hopes, dreams, expectations don't pan out to what they are. And sometimes players get put in really crappy positions where they're helpless, they're hopeless, and they're just stuck. And you can have a coach that's being super real with you about why you're stuck, or you can have a coach that's just lying to you about why you're stuck. Both things are very hard, and I love that you bring that up, because teammates, you don't have to like pity them. You just need to understand their battle the same way that they understand yours. Because if you don't, you just brush them off, like, people get put into really, really, really bad headspaces. And I was blessed to have just elevated, like, where I played at as I've like transferred, like, on very few minutes. But it doesn't happen for people like that very often, and so I'm very, very blessed in that sense. But I've been on the end of playing time, and it's a hard battle. It's a very hard battle, something that'll mature you. So glad you brought that up.
I'm just talking about some few things that I don't think are talked about, just to shout it out, get it out there in the world. But I think how people treat each other on a lot of college teams is unacceptable. I think my team personally faced some struggles because we're girls. Girls talk, girls gossip. No matter where you go, you're going to get some gossip. All right? It's just how it works. It's just life. But coming from what we just talked about to how I am as a player and what I got offered to me, there's a lot of struggles, whether you play bench, you play full 90 minutes of a soccer game. There's two complete different struggles, and you have to understand that as a non-starter and a starter. You have to understand both struggles. Like, the amount of pressure that a starter gets is insane, and the amount of pressure that a person that comes on for a starter is just as equivalent. And I feel like a lot of people overlook that, and they just don't give enough credit. I don't think a lot of players give enough credit to each player. Like, every player is so valuable on a team. You're on a team. You have to realize that. Like, a team becomes a team when you guys work together for one common goal. That's what a community is. That's what a team means. That's what family does. Like, you're working for a common goal. And I think that gets lost. A lot of people lose that sight and start to really just work for themselves, which, yes, work for yourself. Like, that is, you need to work for yourself to work for a team. I agree on that statement. But the second you start only working for yourself, you're not only taking away from your team, but you're taking away from yourself, because, like I said, at the end of the day, the end goal is what your team is working for. So don't be a hothead. Like, you may have the minutes, you may have the stats, you may have it all, but you have to realize, like, this person is also working for that. Just because they're not executing it, that's still their goal. So give them some credit. Like, they want to do that for you and your team, but like, they're not given the opportunity. So don't use that against them. It's not their fault. Like, sure, if they're not working hard, like, talk some sense into them, give them positive encouragement. But the second you start talking down on your teammates, the second, like, everything goes downhill. Because once your team is infected inside, like on the inner circle, that's when you see failure. Like, I think team success all comes with connection. And the second you start battling that connection is the second you won't see results on the field. So I think, back to my original point, is whether you're a starter or you don't play any minutes, there is a struggle on each side of that each side will not see unless you're on the other side of it, and you're never going to fully understand this person's struggle compared to this person's struggle. But I will say, as a starter, there's many struggles. And as I've heard, being a non-starter, being a non-minute player, like, there's lots of struggles. And I think people don't realize that just because you're getting success and this person on this team is getting more than you doesn't mean they're perfect sunshine and rainbows in their mind. There's a lot of mental stuff that I think a lot of starting athletes, and they just have a lot of extra pressure. And I'm not discrediting people that don't play a lot, because shoot, that's a mental battle as itself. Like, you come to a team and you're not playing, obviously that's going to destroy your confidence a little bit. So moral of the story, like, just remember there is struggles on each side of that. Like, you cannot discredit anyone on a team, because a team is a team. Everyone contributes to a team. Do not discredit how someone is feeling or what's going on that you don't know about. Like, just be kind to everyone on the team. Just be kind to each other. Like, you will not succeed if you guys are not kind. Like, I think that's the most important thing. Like, you really need to be kind to each other when you're on a team, because that's the second you guys will start failing, when you turn against each other.
So true in life, so true in sports, so true in your team dynamic. And like in college, it's different, like to the extreme of how much that affects people, because like college athletics is a much higher intensity, much higher investment. So when you're in high school, and I don't know how you'll feel about this, but when I was in high school, you start, or like you are like a leader in the program or something of that sort, you can get a lot of external pressures in that position, and it can also like separate you from your teammates sometimes, because of the same thing you just said, of like, it's two people not seeing eye to eye on each other's struggles and thinking one has it all and the other one has it all, and not coming to the middle ground. And there's a lot of jealousy, envy, and girls don't really handle their emotions as well in high school. And if you're not on a super successful team, it really gets bad, because those things will fly. But it's so important what you just said, because it goes both ways.
I just wanted to touch on that because I think it's really important. I mean, there's struggles regardless of what type of player you are or what type of commitment you have to the team. You're going to struggle. Everyone struggles. So just don't forget that when you transition into high school to college. Like, you could come onto a team as a freshman and you could clearly see that a senior is struggling, and you might struggle like that. So don't ever discredit someone, because there's a lot of stuff in every conversation with a coach to a player. You don't talk about, people don't talk about what they have going on between their coach and them. So, just keep that in mind. There's a lot going on behind closed doors that each player doesn't know. Coaches are really tactical. They're really strategical. They say things to certain players, so this player thinks this, and it encourages this player. Like, it's really tactical what coaches say and what they do, and you really need to consider that. So just keep in mind, like, there's a lot going on behind closed doors, and you're never going to really fully know what's going on or fully understand why it's going on, but it's going on. So just consider that and don't discredit anyone.
Very mature and very kind, caring statement, Kylie, because holy cow, some people, it is literally an epidemic of an issue. And what I was trying to say about high school is, like, I didn't even notice it. When my teammates didn't love me or like felt some type of way about me, I was just kind of oblivious to it. Like, I don't know, I didn't care, I didn't notice, or like a mix.
Oh, no, I agree. In high school, I never cared. If someone didn't like me, I'd be like, okay, so, but don't do that in college. All right, guys, don't do that in college. Don't do that.
Yeah. In college, it's different. You ride and die with these people, and you spend majority of your time. And you will have some people that you don't want to empathize with. This is life. And you're gonna have some people where you're like, dude, that just get over it and whatnot. But like, be a good person, set your standard, say who you're gonna be as a teammate, and be that person in good and bad. And something I want to note is, it was said a lot my freshman year, but like, you have to get outside yourself, like you said. you have to get outside yourself every day, in every practice, everywhere you go, in your class, like when you're interacting with your family, like even that can trickle into your family of or your peers that might not be doing what you're doing. You think like what you're going through is so much harder than what they're going through, or like it's not equivalent. And you also have to understand, like on a team, if you're gonna empathize with people and understand where they're coming from, you don't always have to be in the same place. But if you want to get a perspective sometimes that aids you more, you might have to talk to someone who's been where you were or is where you are, and then can kind of navigate that. Because if you're talking to the starter all the time that gets the minutes and a player who doesn't get the minutes, you guys aren't going to help each other a ton. You can empathize, but you're not going to be assisting each other a whole bunch if you can't get outside of yourselves. So I think I'm glad you brought that up.
I'll just say this, but I think you mentioned it a little bit, like how they're gonna be part of your life. You know, college teams, they become your family because you do spend most of your time with your college athletic team. And just for example of how much like they will mean to you is like I wasn't on the team this whole semester. I didn't miss one of their games when they played at home. I cheered them on. I sat on the sideline. I gave them a hug every game. Like my love I didn't just instantly disregard these people anymore. Like these people will truly be a very big part of your life. And yeah, it's really exciting. I think people should be excited to join college teams. You know, there's struggle, there's anger, there's arguments, there's a lot of undiscussed territory you're never really going to understand until you get there. Don't forget the takeaway. Like these people will be in your life for a pretty long time. Like I don't think I know for a fact I'll talk to a good amount of my old soccer team for the rest of my life probably. Like they become your family. So just through good and bad, just try to take away the best you can, because at the end of the day, you're going to be done with that team at some point. Just take what you will from it. You know, don't let the negatives outrule the positive. There's a lot of positives on a team, regardless of how bad it may be at the moment. Because now, not being on that sports team, they are still my friends, you know, and I'll still support them. So, you know, they'll become your family.
I think that's all that we have to talk about today. So thank you, Kylie, for coming on, taking your time, your volunteered time to talk about your journey, share your wisdom, share where you're at, because that's what people need to hear. Is a lot of the things you talked about and brought up today, you're going to make a lot of people realize they're not alone, and a lot of the things that you battle in your mind and in your life, your career, academic and athletically. So appreciate you, Kylie, and we'll be catching up as you head over to Rome.
When I get over there, I think we should do one. I think that'd be really cool. You know, talk about how an opportunity became something. So I think we should look into that.